I mean, I now have a podcast because I do one for channel members. Does that make me just like Kathy and Stella? I think so. Kathy and Stella, a show that I will be referring to just as that because I don't want to get demonetized by YouTube. It's a show that's been on my radar for a while now. I knew about it when it was having its mini UK tour and I couldn't manage to see it. And I knew the second I found out it was transferring to the West End that it would be one of my most anticipated shows of 2024. You may be thinking that's a really weird one to have, seeing as we've literally had shows like Starlight Express, Mean Girls, shows people have been waiting for years to come back to the West End or make a West End transfer. And yet the small fringy show about two girls solving a crime from Hull is the one that I'm most excited for, but I really enjoy fringe musicals. And because of the fact that I can never manage to get up to Edinburgh to go to the Edinburgh Fringe, I can never actually enjoy them. But thanks to success stories like Mincemeat, we're seeing more fringe theatre work on itself and make itself bigger to inhabit a West End stage. So, is Kathy and Stella successful? Who should go and see Kathy and Stella? And was I satisfied with all the twists and turns with this true crime story? Let's find out. But if you haven't seen my face before, hi, I'm Ellie. I talk about theatre. I am the most chaotic theatre person on the internet. I do reviews, discussions, chaos rankings and tier lists. And if any of that sounds interesting to you, please consider hitting like and subscribe. It really helps me out how to start the channel. But let's dive in to this musical. Now, what's quite funny is that I went to see this show on press night. And if you are unaware, the press night for Kathy and Stella ended after Act 1 because of a situation on stage, which left the stage a little bit wetter than expected. So, when I returned to this show, I got to see Act 1 twice. And I'm going to pick up in little places on things I recognised on a second viewing of Act 1, just Act 1. My end of year show count will now have a 0.5 on it. Because watching it for another time, I actually managed to pick up on a little bit of foreshadowing and get a stronger guess at some of the twists in Act 2. And also, this is a show that is a murder mystery. With that, there are obvious spoilers that I could divulge, and I am going to save all of that to the end. I will talk about the big twists that got me, the twists I predicted, and of course, who actually did it right at the end. So if you want to watch this before you see the show, you are absolutely fine. I will make it very clear when I'm about to dive into spoilers, and then you can click off the video and you'll be all good. So, Kathy and Stella, I think its biggest strength is just the fringy vibe. It's so fun. You can tell exactly where this show has developed itself and grown. It's so quick in its comedy. It's brilliant. And a lot of the structure as well very much feels like it's been shaped by that type of theatre. I think comparing it a little bit to Mincemeat is actually very apt because these shows do feel very similar in taking something that is fringy and making it a little bit bigger scale. Is this the biggest show in the world? No. But because of that fact, it manages to maintain such a charm that really allows you to go with it. I think a lot of that is down to just the delightful performances, especially from our two leads, who I'll talk about in more detail later. But I think it actually does a really strong job at not only being a comedy, but also being a really fun, true crime story. There is a real mystery to it. There's a lot of open-ended questions that is really fun, especially when you're watching it, to go into the interval, kind of pitching ideas and going, okay, who did this? Oh, okay, maybe that's a red herring, and kind of connecting the dots for yourself. And I think that is the hallmark of a very successful murder mystery. And I'm really glad that the comedy and the wittiness and the charm doesn't negate a lot of the murder mystery format and the themes. Because in my mind, the closest thing I can point to is something like Play That Goes Wrong, which is a murder mystery, but that show is not about the murder mystery. You know who did it at the start of Act 1 because of something that goes wrong. The intention there is obviously different here, but I'm really glad to say that this manages to be successful at both. I actually think the show is strongest with its theme and build-up of female friendship. The relationship that is built between Kathy and Stella is so lovely. You really do get a sense of these two people who really respect each other, who really value each other, who are worried about each other. I think it's very rare, especially in musical theatre, to see female friendship explored in this way. In a story that is very modern and very natural, we get flashbacks to the start of their friendship, the building up, and you really get this feeling of these two girls who are dependable on each other, who have grown up together, who have been through thick and thin. And it really ends up aligning you to their quest to solve this murder. I think these two are definitely the anchor of the show. You need Kathy and Stella to make this work, especially with how dark it actually is. This isn't really a show for the faint of heart. It's not overly graphic, but there are definitely moments. But the way that Kathy and Stella react to the situation, the way that they take this opportunity to solve this mystery, it manages to balance out a lot of the darker elements of this story, which ends up making for a really great dark comedy that actually, for a show about death, actually feels really fun. I think the structure of the show works. It's a murder mystery. You get what you get. It's very much the hallmarks of the genre, which makes sense as this is very evidently a celebration and a love letter to this style of story, but treating it in a very unserious way. I think the setup takes a little while to get going, especially as we're introduced to our victim, which they spend a little bit of time at the start of the show, making you have a certain distaste for her, so you don't feel as bad when, she's... But I wonder if this could be shortened a little bit to make it a little bit breezier, especially with a first act that is very long and has a generally slow pace. Once the actual murder happens, the ball really gets rolling with this story. And from there, I think it's a slam dunk. We get introduced to the characters one by one, our different suspects, the people who are working with, the people who may turn out to be double agents in this whole thing. Double agents is a very spy term. That doesn't really feel like a murder mystery term. But you know what? That's the best thing I can think of right now, so we are going with it. Double crossing instead of double agent. Yeah, let's go with that. I like how it's built up. We get more and more little details. They do a great job at placing the bits of evidence throughout. I like from here how it's paced. We get beat by beat by beat. We get loads of different little bits of evidence. I love a lot of the foreshadowing here. I picked up on a lot of it on a second watch of Act 1, seeing little key details that are put into the script that actually pay off, even knowing what you know by the end of Act 1 only. Act 2 is shorter and it's breezier. However, I kind of feel like it's a little bit quick to solving it. I'll be kind of vague with how I describe this, but we're kind of given a lot of exposition and a lot of change in a single scene, and I feel like some of this could have been placed a little bit smarter so that we can actually go along with building this mystery in our heads. It feels like it's paced just a little bit too quick to really make me feel as engaged with this mystery as I did in Act 1. But what I will say is the final twist, who did it, got me. And I kind of feel silly for not predicting it. But I think despite a few bits where I feel like the pace isn't quite right or the mystery isn't building as well, I think it's very easy to forgive because of how much you end up loving these characters. They're so fun, so easy to love, so funny. I just adore them. And by the end, I felt very satisfied with the show. So while pacing-wise, I have a few issues, I actually am overall positive with the story. The music is cute. It's not a score that I feel has embedded itself in my mind like some of the new musicals that I've seen recently, but there's definitely some key highlights. I think the opening number for Kathy and Stella is the best material in the show. It's such a fun beat and really perfectly introduces you to this podcast, to who Kathy and Stella are, the different viewers in their audience, and the way that they structure their show. I think it's an opening number. Well, I say opening number, it's technically the second number in the show, but I think it's an opening number that really does a great job at world building and really giving you a great sense of who Kathy and Stella are and why you should fall in love with them. It's also got some of the funniest lyrics that I've heard in musical theatre. I always say, I think it's very hard to get a laugh within your lyrics. Your lyrics have to work twice as hard to be as funny as a single punchline. And Kathy and Stella's Murder podcast actually does a great thing with balancing it out. There's funny lyrics in there that do get a laugh. Like the bluntness of Kathy admitting that they're recording this in her mum's garage. And the way that they embed a lot of the gruesome terms that they use into this really cheerful music that is really comedic. But it also balances that with a couple of moments of just like quite deadpan delivery of dialogue within the song. A great example of this is a little bit later into the song, where we get the moments where they're reading their fan comments. And it's Stella's quite quick and blunt reactions to these that every time I've listened to it, never fails to make me crack a smile. I think there's some nice character songs in this. We have Wow Felicia Taylor, which is kind of setting up Felicia Taylor, setting up their ambitions for their podcast. But I think it's a song that comes a little bit later. If I didn't have you, I would die. That serves as a great summation of their friendship. I think a song that has ended up getting into my head the most is Never Felt So Alive. I just really like the melody of this song. I think it's just nice. That's my valid criticism. I just like it. I like Sue's song that she gets in Act 2. This character ends up being quite headstrong, quite stern, and it's a nice moment where you get to see a different side of her. And I think the finale is really sweet as well. I think Act 1 has the songs that have kind of stuck with me more, and I don't know if that is because it's just the stronger material, which I'm more inclined to say, than the alternative, which is the fact that I have seen Act 1 twice, so I had more opportunity to get to know that music. I don't think it's a score that's revolutionary, but I think it's very fitting for what this show is. It's fringy, it's fun, it's breezy, and I like the contrast of the style of the music to a lot of the darker themes of the show, kind of making it feel a little bit more natural of a balance between the two. What I do really like as well is this set. Gorgeous. This is a great example of taking a fringe show and bringing it up through the production value to fit nicely into the West End. If we're going to continue comparing this to Mincemeat, we saw all of the budget for Mincemeat get spent in one single finale number, where I think Kathy and Stella uses its set quite well throughout the whole show, for different moments of spectacle. The main structure of the set is Kathy's mum's garage, but they really easily bring you into all of these different locations through clever uses of additional set, and even little pieces that have a multi-purpose. Let's say that. That's a weird sentence structure, but we're saying that. We go from a book sale with this quite bulky set piece, which I think is probably the weakest in the show. It feels a little bit clunky, especially as it kind of trundles its way out, to a police station with a notice board that comes down, which features one of my favorite background jokes, which is the Wi-Fi password. I'm not going to say what it is. When you go and see the show, look at what the Wi-Fi password is. I found that so funny. It is probably less funny than I'm making it out to be, but I very much appreciated it as a background detail. We have the really great touch of the lights on the backboard. The suspect board, I'll call it, or the pin board. You know, when you have a murder mystery and you're like connecting the dots and it's that board. Yeah, but they do that where the dots that connect it and what's normally like the string is done with loads of different light. There's two little panels at each side of stage, which doubles as shelves in the garage, but also a mortuary and also a pub, very easily bringing us into these different spaces. But my favorite set piece of all is one that I will show it right now if I have a production photo, but it is the sign for MurderCon, which is our main location in Act 2. God, that looks beautiful. That is stunning. That is gorgeous. I love the neon. Mwah. Let's talk about this cast, because I think the cast is what just really sells this show to me. Bronte Barb and Rebecca Hines are legendary. They're so good. They're so perfect. I think it's their chemistry. Like, you can really tell these two are close friends on and off stage. They are queens adjusting each other's crowns. There's a real care that you really get a strong sense of between these two. And the friendship feels real. And even as both of them have different passions, have different falling outs and reasons for doing what they do, it still feels like, despite all of their decision making in the show, that they have a strong care for each other. That never disappears. And I feel like that's very strong and very important to see. Even through a very typical misunderstanding subplot, you get a real sense of both of them having a strong care for each other. And both of them making decisions that makes the other one upset very much feels like they are still doing it with the other person in mind. Which makes a subplot that could feel very stereotypical actually really work. There's also fantastic supporting actors. We have Ben Redfern as David Slatter, who is unhinged. We have Imelda Warren Green, who plays Erica, who is a completely different kind of unhinged. You know, Slatter being very, sinisterly unhinged, and Erica feeling a bit more unhinged in the, crazy fan sort of way. I think my favourite supporting performance actually comes from Elliot Williams and Jaw, who plays Detective Sue Shaw. A name that I just struggled to say. Detective Sue Shaw. Who is sure to keep Kathy and Stella out of the mystery plot. Very unsuccessfully. She doesn't really do a great job at it. She serves a very important role in this show as the straight man, essentially. She has a very deadpan delivery to all of her dialogue, leading to her being a fantastic foil to the more chaotic Kathy and Stella. There's Elliot Broadfoot, who plays Justin, who is really sweet. There is a real sweetness to him, and you really feel on board with him. It's really nice to see Kathy kind of build a friendship with someone outside of the friendship she has with Stella. And it's quite nice to pick up the differences in their relationship to just show you exactly how strong Kathy and Stella's relationship is. Broadfoot's portrayal is just utterly charming, and I really like the balance of his portrayal of Justin to his portrayal of Kathy's mum. You get a real sense, especially through Elliot's portrayal of this mother role, that she's trying to let her daughter down easy. Finally, there's Hannah Jane Fox, who plays Felicia and all of Felicia's siblings. Now, I really love the characterization of these different characters, each one feeling quite unique, but there is definitely a problem with some of the diction. I was finding, even on a second watch of Act 1, that I was struggling to pick up on all of the dialogue that Fox was giving. She goes a little bit too hard into the character voice, which really works to show the arrogance of the character, but we end up losing a lot of that dialogue and a lot of that really funny dialogue that would get her a stronger laugh. I actually think it's when she plays the brother that she gives her best portrayal, having this absolute swagger and ego about him. And it is really interesting to see how cleverly she diversifies each of these characters. All right. Here you go. We're going to dive quickly into spoilers. If you haven't seen the show and you don't want the twist to be spoiled, you can click away from the video now. You will not miss anything else. If you have seen the show or just don't really care that much about spoilers, let's talk about the twists. Let's start with the twist I actually saw coming. And I only saw this coming when I watched Act 1 for a second time. And that is that Sue Shaw is the informant. So, Kathy and Stella have this informant that they know about. This informant tipped off Felicia Taylor about this murderer in the initial murdering spree that they had. They initially think that this informant was David Slatter, and that Slatter was the murderer trying to put them off the trail and framing an innocent person. But it turns out that this was actually Sue Shaw. I got this twist from the fact that there is a single joke in Act 1 where they're talking about policing, and they make a joke saying that police officers will often frame people for crimes that they haven't done. And this comes across in the first act as just a joke. It's a very funny moment with its own right, but it actually sets up perfectly the twist that it's Sue Shaw who was the informant, who framed someone for a murder they didn't do. Now, she does it unintentionally, truly believing in her own mind that person's guilty. But I was very happy that I predicted that twist. I was like, actually, I think I've got that. And that felt very satisfying. But Sue Shaw is not the murderer. The murderer turns out to be Erica, who does the entire show standing there in an orange jumpsuit. How did I not see that? How did I not perceive that? I like a lot of the motivation of the murder from her perspective. Being a massive fan of Kathy and Stella and trying to give them a niche after Felicia Taylor disrespected them. I like how this links up with a lot of the things we see, a lot of the evidence that they get actually coming specifically from her. There's enough there for you to kind of predict it, but I do think some of the structure of the show ends up weakening this twist a little bit because it kind of eliminates every single other option before you get that twist. So I'm not sure if it felt as satisfying in that end moment where it's revealed, but I feel like that is a little bit nitpicky and I can still enjoy the twist. And I think the final scene you get, the final showdown between Erica and Kathy and Stella is so well done and so funny and such a great way to overcome that villain. Kathy and Stella solve a murder is a lot of fun. It's so fun. I'm so glad that I managed to enjoy this show as much as I did, especially going into it with the highest of expectations. I think there's a few pacing issues here and there, and some moments where I feel like the mystery doesn't quite live up to what it could be, but I think there's such a strong charm about the show that it's so easy to forgive any minor irks you might have. And I think a lot of that rides on the fact that the friendship between Kathy and Stella is done so well, both in the book and thanks to the fantastic performances of Bronte Barb and Rebecca Hines. But what did you think? Have you seen Kathy and Stella? Did you solve the murder? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. If you did enjoy this video, please consider hitting like and subscribe. It really helps me out, helps out the channel. Here's some links to some other videos on the screen right now and a link to my Instagram if you want to drop me a follow over there. I also have other socials and a merch store in the description down below. But that's it for me today, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.